you would have met her before Melody, do you think you and this woman would be married?
Phew. The silence is deafening.
No.
Did y'all really have to give him the cue? Let him answer it.
Well, I'm just saying, because she likes you because you had money.
You don't want to answer it? No. Okay. How does it feel to hear that the man who said that he wanted to spend the rest of your life with you?
I think it's bull. At the end of the day, what I feel is that Martell couldn't leave either of us alone. That's what I would say. Because he was still there, and if I hadn't have left, he still would have been there.
But how does it feel to hear that? And I'm not going to put words in your mouth. And
Thank you.
And you can cuss me out and stop me when I say this. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. 'Cause I'm not. It seems to me that you were in love with two women at the same time, and that you just weren't enough for him to love all at once.
I was enough. I would never.
In a recent interview, Love and Marriage Huntsville creator and executive producer Carlos King dropped a huge bomb. He freely acknowledged the possibility that the show was ending, but what was the real reason Carlos decided to cut the connection at last? We are thrust into the depths of treachery, exhaustion, and covert conflict by the response. In his explanation of why Love and Marriage Huntsville became too difficult to run, Carlos King didn't miss words. According to him, the show became unmanageable and not in a lighthearted way like a TV drama. In an Instagram Live, Carlos acknowledged that he was at a turning point in his life. He stated, "I have to consider if the energy around this show is even worth it anymore." That was a warning sign that the show's backstage problems had gotten out of hand, not just a producer venting. Carlos explained that by the season, the reunion tapes were becoming increasingly stressful and that several cast members no longer wanted to film together. Individuals were avoiding each other in group scenes, leaving the set, and even refusing to be in the same room. In addition to the cast drama, Carlos claimed that it was emotional burnout that made it a logistical nightmare to shoot a simple scene. Carlos discussed how the actors were losing their sense of fun. The effects of repeatedly experiencing pain from real life on camera began to become apparent. There were no more boundaries.
I think you're still in love with Melody, and I think it's okay to say that. When you say I miss that, that is your family.
Both their personal and professional lives were impacted by what transpired on set. Every season brought a greater emotional burden, and Carlos was no exception. As a producer, he revealed that it was draining to try to extract storylines from people who were obviously over it. According to him, "I'm not going to beg adults to talk to each other." As if things couldn't get any messier, Carlos revealed his first shocking revelation. This collapse was centered on Melody and Martell Holt. They were the epitome of reality TV in the beginning. The show's first significant plotline was centered around a complicated marriage, cheating scandal, and messy divorce. But what was once an engaging television program became a poisonous battlefield.
I know that, I just know he's the one that's going to help me get over any foolishness, or to start to satisfy my wife 100%,
Right.
to do what I'm supposed to do.
It's like devastating to me to think about my family being split. Why would I stoop so low and be so foolish to really risk my family multiple times?
Don't think I'm being facetious, but in terms of cockiness or arrogance or something like that, have you ever saw that in me?
It started a little bit after you got to college at A&M and then you started to become a star there.
Yeah.
That's when you start to get a little cocky, a little arrogant. You got to tone it down a little bit, man. Because
Yes.
I mean,
I need a whole makeover.
Yeah, if you can get one,
Right.
if you can get one without changing your heart. Because you got a good heart. You got a good heart, but I mean, it's just your mind telling you to do a lot of different things that you don't need to be doing.
Yeah.
They had reached a point in their relationship where communication was almost non-existent by the end of the season. Carlos disclosed that they hardly exchanged words while filming. Basic co-parenting situations were uncomfortable, brief, and tense. Since they didn't want to be near each other at all, he claimed that working with them required more work. Their dynamic was the foundation of the show, so this was a serious setback. Oh, and the rest of the cast was affected by their personal drama as effectively. Friends were compelled to take sides and social gatherings turned into battlefields. Melody was frequently solitary, but Martell's actions were criticized by almost everyone. The rest of the show began to suffer from the emotional toll of their animosity. With no end in sight, the cast was trapped in a never-ending cycle of making the same points without any real progress on the plot. Carlos acknowledged that he had trouble handling it as well. Despite his desire to preserve the authenticity of their story, he could see how the tension was upending the show's entire framework. Melody and Martell weren't the only ones at odds, because what had once been a close connect group swiftly devolved into a divided household. What had once drawn viewers in was now driving the cast away. Kimmy and Maurice Scott attempted to act as the show's sane voices as it went off course. Initially, the Scotts positioned themselves as the stabilizers, constantly seeking peace and attempting to calm things down. But that role was impossible to uphold in a cast full of resentful individuals. Their attempt to remain neutral actually backfired, Carlos explained. Rather than being commended for their attempt at mediation, Kimmy and Maurice were drawn further into the conflict. Both were charged with picking sides, particularly when Martell's interactions with other cast members became heated. Maurice was perceived as being overly devoted to Martell, and Kimmy's composed demeanor was interpreted as being inauthentic or passive.
All of that foolishness that you felt like was no big deal at one particular time has blossomed into a whole forest of big deal. Because my husband has all over the internet about having sex with his wife with cancer.
The tension even permeated the plot of their marriage. Their dynamic started to be questioned by fans, and drama that was unrelated to them also started to affect them. Kimmy, who was also coping with actual health problems, was particularly affected by this, Carlos alluded. Despite her appearance in the film, it was evident that she was being worn down by the group's toxicity. Scenes that were supposed to foster harmony or development would collapse. Carlos described how even seemingly straightforward conversations would degenerate into emotional minefields when group events were filmed. Even the peacemakers didn't feel secure. Some individuals on the production side began acting erratically, Carlos claims. There were people, he claimed, who weren't acting honorably. Coming from someone who has based his entire brand on telling authentic, unvarnished stories and creating Black excellence, that is a powerful statement. Although he did not name specific producers, he made it apparent that some were working against him, displaying partiality and spreading false information. Initially, the loyalty divide was caused by divergent viewpoints. Authenticity and organic storylines were always priorities for Carlos. Some producers, however, allegedly wanted to intentionally stir things up in order to get good footage, even if it meant ruining real lives, as things became more chaotic. Carlos was in a tight spot. He claimed that it reached a stage where he was no longer able to identify the show he had produced. Meddling by executives made it worse. Carlos was under pressure from superiors to include particular characters more in stories or shield others from criticism. More division was brought about by this type of manipulation. Carlos asserts when you have people in your own house working against you, it's hard to keep the lights on. Because he was unsure of who was really on his side, he found it difficult to make decisions. However, what if I revealed to you that the actual dagger was given by a cast member Carlos trusted until it was too late? Carlos believed that the crew had been betrayed, but it went even further. One of the worst betrayals, in his own words, was from a cast member he regarded as family. Although Carlos did not disclose the identity, he claimed that the individual was deliberately leaking information, tampering with plots, and exploiting the program for their own ends. The situation worsened when this individual started purposefully splitting up the cast. According to Carlos, they would tell one person one thing while spinning a different version to another, which fueled mistrust and increased chaos within the group. The show became unpredictable because no one could tell what was real anymore, not because of plots. Carlos was shook by the betrayed trust. It was one of the most agonizing experiences of his career, he claimed. In addition to destroying the production, this individual was making money off of the drama they contributed to. They were dismantling him while establishing their own brand on the platform he provided. Not only was that betrayal personal, but it was also professional. Carlos knew that with someone like that involved, he couldn't proceed. He replied, "I can't work with someone who's actively working against me." He began reevaluating the entire future of love and marriage for several reasons, one of which was that particular moment, Huntsville. One more force was gradually removing the show's vitality. As all of this chaos developed, Carlos brought attention to the cast's anxiety as a result of this kind of pressure. People were doing more than just filming a show, he said. They were battling the public's perception 24/7. It became a PR battle in every scene. On-camera tears were deemed to be fake. Someone was probably hiding something if they remained silent. That continual criticism eroded the cast's courage to show vulnerability. The most unpleasant aspect, Carlos was unable to shield them when the drama wasn't as intense as people believed. The blogs would only publish the most extreme versions, and once a story gained traction, it couldn't be stopped. Carlos acknowledged that the attention was no longer constructive. He acknowledged that he was experiencing emotional and mental strain as a result of the show. It became more like survival, he claimed, and it ceased to be enjoyable. Longtime viewers who saw Carlos give his all in each season of Love and Marriage found that one line particularly poignant. The city of Huntsville, Carlos claimed he no longer felt in charge of how the show was going. Once a place to celebrate Black success, marriage, and development, it had turned into a battlefield rife with conflict, treachery, and constant damage control. Managing strained relationships was too much for producers, and the cast hardly spoke off camera. He talked about how he never knew what crisis would arise next, making it emotionally taxing to even step onto the set. He added that he was protecting the brand, which he created from the ground up. Walking away didn't mean quitting to Carlos. More significantly, it was about protecting himself and preserving the Love and Marriage franchise before it was completely destroyed. "I won't sacrifice myself for a show," he declared. "I cherish what I made, but I cherish myself even more." Many fans had things to say. As one viewer put it, "Carlos gave us everything, but you can only carry toxic energy for so long." Another person commented, "I noticed the change in Carlos's eyes. Not only was this burnout, but it was also betrayal." Some even praised his choice, saying, "Let it go before it blows you away. Nobody is owed your peace." Carlos might have more surprises in store, but the drama doesn't end with the cameras gone. Therefore, is this merely a pause or the end? Fans are already making assumptions despite Carlos's poor explanation. Some believe that this is a gentle reboot, a means of decluttering, revamping the structure, and possibly making a stronger return. Others think he's prepared to leave Huntsville completely and move to another place to start over. He did allude to his larger future plans and additional stories to share. With fresh faces or even a different city, Carlos might be able to maintain the Love and Marriage franchise. However, one thing is certain, he will act on his own terms in whatever way he chooses. The question now is, what do you think led Carlos to finally end his career as fans wait for the next move? Was the show doomed from the start, or is there any chance it will survive? Leave a comment with your thoughts.